My name is Evan Hayes. I am 27, and for the past 3 years I have been grinding as a junior architect at Westlake Design in Seattle. It is one of those firms where every line you draw feels like it is under a microscope. One wrong move can make people stop taking you seriously. I live in a cramped one-bedroom on the edge of the city, with thin walls and a view of a neighbor's overflowing dumpster. My days blur together. Drafting software, endless revisions, late nights, and cheap coffee. I do not complain much. This is what I signed up for when I graduated from the University of Washington, thinking I would design buildings that change skylines. But the real challenge is not the work. It is my boss. Her name is Alexandra Reed. She runs the design department. People call her the steel wall when she is not around. She is in her early 40s, sharp and controlled, with an expression that never gives away what she is feeling. Her dark hair is almost always pulled into a tight bun, and her eyes make you feel like you are being measured. I have watched her tear apart a presentation with one raised eyebrow. Her voice stays calm, but her words can cut like winter air. I admire her, even if she scares me. She is brilliant and demanding. She pushes every idea until it is either strong enough to stand or weak enough to collapse. In 3 years, most of our conversations have been simple. She marks up my drawings. I nod. I promise I will fix it. I have never seen her smile outside of client meetings. People whisper that she is divorced and that she poured everything into work after it ended. No kids. No real personal life. Just deadlines. So when Westlake announced the annual winter retreat, I was not excited. HR sold it like a relaxing getaway in the Cascade Mountains. Team bonding. Brainstorming. A break from the city. But everyone knew the truth. It was extended office time with snow and forced small talk. The forecast warned about a serious storm, but HR waved it off. They said we would reach the lodge before it hit. I packed light. A duffel with thermals, a hoodie, my laptop, and low expectations. By Friday afternoon, we were on a chartered bus leaving Seattle, everyone talking too loudly like they were trying to sound happy. I sat near the back, scrolling through emails. Alexandra was up front, her laptop open like she was still at work. As the bus climbed into the mountains, the sky turned a heavy gray. Evergreen trees lined the road like dark guards. The first snow came as soft flurries, then thicker, then so dense it looked like the world was being erased. The bus slowed. The tires crunched over fresh powder. Conversations died down as people realized this was not just a pretty snowfall. Then the driver pulled over at a roadside pullout near a few scattered cabins. They looked like emergency rentals for hikers, simple wooden boxes half buried in snow. The driver turned on the intercom and said the storm was worse than expected. Visibility was near zero. We could not safely keep going. We would wait it out here. Panic hit the bus in a quiet, messy way. People stood up, grabbed bags, complained, joked, and asked questions no one could answer. Resort staff handed out cabin keys and told us to pair up. I tried to step toward a group of coworkers, but the last key was already being shoved into my hand. One of my colleagues gave me a look that was half pity and half amusement. He leaned in and said, "You are with Reed. Good luck, man." My stomach dropped. I turned and saw Alexandra already moving toward the cabins. Her coat was dusted with snow, her posture straight, her face unreadable. Of all the people to get stuck with, it had to be her. I grabbed my bag and followed, the wind slapping snow into my face like needles. The others disappeared into their cabins, their laughter getting swallowed by the storm. Our cabin was the farthest one, a small structure with a slanted roof buried under drifts. I pushed the door open and we stepped inside. The air was cold and stale. The place was simple. A main room with a stone fireplace, a wobbly table, 2 chairs, and a tiny kitchenette with basic supplies. Off to the side was a small bedroom with 1 queen bed, 1 A bathroom that looked like it had not been updated since the 1980s. No television, no Wi-Fi, just isolation. Alexandra set her bag down and immediately checked her phone. Her brow tightened. No signal. She tried again, like the screen might change its mind. Then she looked at me and said, calm and businesslike, "We will wait it out." I nodded, trying to act normal while my brain screamed. I spotted a stack of firewood by the hearth and said I would get the fire going. I knelt down, arranged kindling, and lit a match. The flames caught and began to crawl over the wood, throwing warm light across the room. Alexandra paced near the window, watching the snow build up against the glass. The storm pressed in like a living thing. After a while she said, "We might be here overnight. Rescue will not come until morning at best." A whole night with my strict boss. In a cabin with one bed. I checked the kitchenette and found protein bars, instant tea, crackers, and bottled water. Not much, but enough. I needed to keep busy, so I told her I would grab more wood from the shed outside. She looked at me, and her eyes stayed on mine a second longer than usual. "Be careful," she said. "It is brutal out there." That small concern caught me off guard. I nodded and stepped into the storm. Outside, the wind hit me like a wall. Snow blinded me. I fought my way to the shed, loaded my arms with logs, and pushed back toward the cabin. By the time I got inside, my jacket was soaked and my fingers felt like ice. I dropped the wood by the fireplace and started peeling off my wet coat. Alexandra turned toward me, and for the first time I saw something other than control in her face. It was quick, but it was real. Concern. "You should change before you freeze," she said, pointing toward the bathroom. "There are dry towels in there." I did what she said. When I came back out in a dry sweater and jeans, she had already set out the food and made tea in mismatched mugs. We sat across from each other at the small table, the fire crackling, the storm roaring outside. In that moment, the office disappeared. There was no conference room, no deadlines, no coworkers watching, just two people trapped in a snowy mountain cabin with the cold pressing in and a single bed waiting in the next room. And I had a feeling that whatever happened tonight was going to change everything between us. The cabin felt smaller once the tea was poured and the food was on the table. The storm kept slamming snow against the windows like it was trying to break in. The fire did its best, but the cold still lived in the corners of the room. I could smell smoke and pine, and I could hear the wood pop as it burned. Alexandra sat straight in her chair like she was still in the office. Even with her coat off, she looked like a person who never allowed herself to relax. I tried to act normal, but my heartbeat kept changing every time she looked up. I tore open my protein bar and took a bite. The wrapper sounded loud in the quiet. She ate slowly, her eyes moving from the table to the window, then back again. The silence started to feel heavy, like it had its own weight. Then she surprised me. "So, Evan," she said, calm but not cold, "what got you into architecture?" I blinked. She had never asked me anything like that. At work, she only talked about drawings, clients, deadlines, and what needed fixing. This felt personal. It felt like she was seeing me as a person, instead of a name on a project list. I set my bar down and rubbed my palms on my jeans. "My dad was a carpenter," I said. "Not fancy work. Decks, roofs, small repairs. When I was a kid, I followed him around. I watched him take an idea and turn it into something real. One time we helped fix up an old community center, and after it was done, people treated it like a new start. I guess that stayed with me. I wanted to build things that mattered." Alexandra held her mug close, like she was borrowing warmth from it. The firelight softened her face, and for once, she looked less like the steel wall and more like a woman who was tired. "That is admirable," she said. "Most people are chasing quick wins, not legacy." Hearing her say that made something lift in my chest. I did not realize how much I needed her approval until it was sitting right there in front of me. I took a breath, then asked the question I had never dared to ask in the office. "What about you? Why do you push so hard?" Her eyes stayed on the fire for a moment. I expected her to shut me down. I expected her to say it was none of my business. But she did not. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and spoke like she was telling the truth to someone she trusted. even if she was not used to it. At first, she said, it was survival. I was young when I started, and I had to prove myself every day. If I made a mistake, people would not just say I made a mistake. They would say I did not belong. I listened without interrupting. The storm outside sounded far away compared to her voice. She swallowed and went on. Then my marriage ended, 5 years ago. I do not talk about it at work. Her words hit me like a sudden drop. I had heard rumors, but hearing it from her made it real. My ex-husband could not handle the hours, she said. He said I loved the job more than him. Maybe he was right. He wanted me to slow down. I did not. And when he left, I decided I would never let anyone see me fall apart again. She gave a small smile, but it did not reach her eyes, so I became the steel wall. I did not know what to say at first. Alexandra Reed, the woman who never seemed shaken, was sitting across from me, admitting she had been hurt. The fire made her eyes shine. Or maybe it was something else. "That sounds lonely," I said softly. She looked at me, and there was a pause where everything in the cabin felt still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "It is," she said. "But loneliness is easier than risk." I nodded, because I understood that more than I wanted to admit. I had someone leave, too, I said. Not a marriage, but it still hurt. She wanted more stability, more certainty. I was buried in work and debt, trying to become someone I could be proud of. She said I was not serious enough about a future. Alexandra's expression changed, not into pity, but into something warmer. "And you stayed," she said. "You kept working." "I did," I said. "Some days I almost quit, not because I hate the work, because I feel like I am always one mistake away from failing." Her mouth softened at the edges like she was close to a real smile. "I know that feeling," she said. "I push you because I see something in you." My throat tightened. "You do?" She nodded once. "Yes. You are talented, Evan. You have good instincts. You just need confidence." That compliment hit me harder than I expected. I felt heat rush to my face, and I looked down at my hands like they might hide the fact that I was affected. "Thank you," I said. "That means more than you think." We talked after that, and it did not feel forced. It did not feel like a boss giving a speech. It felt like two people finally speaking honestly. I told her about long nights in my apartment, how quiet it got when you came home after everyone else had stopped replying to emails. She told me about her early years, about mistakes she made, and how she learned to hide fear behind control. At some point, she laughed. It was quiet, but it was real. I froze for a second because I had never heard that sound from her when no clients were around. It did something to me. It made her feel close. The fire burned lower. The cabin got colder again. I stood and added more logs, and sparks jumped up like tiny stars. Alexandra watched me, her eyes steady, like she was seeing me in a new way. When I sat back down, our knees almost touched under the table. I could feel the warmth of her through denim, and it sent a strange tension through my body. I could not tell if it was only me. Outside, the storm kept building. The world was buried and silent and far away. Inside, the air between us felt charged, like one wrong word could change everything. Alexandra looked toward the bedroom door for a moment, then back at me. "We should try to sleep soon," she said. I nodded, even though I did not feel sleepy. "You take the bed," I said quickly. "I can use the couch." She studied my face. "You will freeze on that couch," she said. "I will be fine." I lied. She did not argue right away. She only stared at the fire, then at me again. Her voice lowered, softer than I had ever heard it in the office. "Evan," she said, "we might not have a choice tonight." My heart thumped hard. She stood, walked toward the bedroom, then stopped in the doorway and turned back. The firelight caught her profile, and her eyes held mine like a question. "There is only one bed," she said. "And if the fire dies down, we will need to stay warm." And in that moment, I realized the night was about to cross a line neither of us could pretend we did not see. I stayed seated for a second after she said it, like my body needed time to catch up with my mind. The words were practical, but the way she said them made my chest tight. Outside, the storm still owned the mountain. Inside, the cabin felt too quiet, like it was listening. I stood slowly and forced myself to sound normal. "Yeah," I said. "We should do what makes sense." Alexandra nodded once, then disappeared into the bedroom. I added another log to the fire and watched the flame catch, because looking at the fire felt safer than thinking about what was about to happen. My hands were steady, but my thoughts were not. I kept imagining how this would look back in Seattle, how impossible it would be to explain, and how the same person who could scare a whole meeting into silence was now asking me to share a bed for warmth. A few minutes later, she came back out holding a folded blanket. Her hair was still pinned up, but the tightness in her shoulders looked different. Like she was fighting her own nerves, too. "I found extra blankets," she said. "We can keep space if you want." I nodded. "That helps." We turned off most of the lights to save the battery lantern, and the cabin fell into a dim orange glow from the fire. Alexandra went into the bedroom first. I followed with my pillow, feeling like I was stepping into a situation that could ruin my career and also change my life. The bedroom was small. The queen bed took up most of it. The air in there felt slightly warmer than the main room, but the cold still lingered along the floorboards. Alexandra sat on the far edge of the bed, keeping her blanket around her shoulders. I sat on the opposite side, leaving a gap between us like a rule. We lay down, fully clothed, sweaters, jeans, socks. It still felt strange. My eyes were open in the dark, staring at the ceiling beams. I could hear the storm and the soft creak of the cabin settling. I could also hear her breathing, controlled and quiet, like she was trying not to make the moment bigger than it already was. Minutes passed. I did not sleep. I kept thinking of her in the office, walking through the studio, heels clicking, eyes scanning drawings like they were puzzles. This version of her felt different, human, close. Then her voice came softly through the dark. "This is strange." I turned my head toward her. "Yeah," I said. "I never thought I would be snowed in with the person who scares me most at work." She let out a quiet laugh. It was real, and it made the room feel warmer than the blankets could. "I do not mean to scare people," she said. "I just do not know how to be anything else there." The honesty in that made me swallow. "Why?" I asked, "if you do not mind me asking." Quote. There was a long pause. I thought she might shut down, but then she sighed, and it sounded heavy, like she had been carrying something for years. "My divorce," she said. "It changed everything. I was married for 12 years. We met in grad school. We were both ambitious. We both said we understood what that would mean. But when things got real, he started to resent it." She shifted slightly, and I heard the blankets rustle. "He said I was cold," she continued. "He said I did not need him, and one day he walked out, and I found out later he was seeing someone younger, someone who made him feel like life was fun again." I felt anger flicker in me on her behalf, but I kept my voice calm. "I am sorry," I said. "That is cruel." Her breath caught like she was trying not to let emotion slip out. "It made me believe I was not built for real connection," she said. "So I stopped trying. I told myself work was enough." In the dark, I could not see her face, but I could hear how close she was to breaking, and I did not want her to feel alone in that moment. "I get it," I said. "Not the same way, but I get it. Someone left me too. She wanted a future I could not promise yet, and when she called me uncommitted, it made me feel like maybe I was not enough." Alexandra did not respond right away. The silence between us felt softer now, like a space where truth could live. Then she whispered, "Tonight I worried about you freezing out there, and it scared me how much I cared. I have not let myself care like that in a long time." My heart thumped hard. I turned slightly, facing her. "Caring does not make you weak," I said. "It makes you human." The words came from a place deeper than I expected. I did not plan to say them, they just felt true. There was a small sound like she swallowed back a sob. "Evan," she whispered, and her voice cracked. "I have not felt seen like this in years." Without thinking, I reached out into the dark. My hand found hers under the covers. Her fingers were cool at first, and then they curled around mine. She did not pull away. She held on. That small touch hit me like a wave. My whole body felt alert, like I could hear every sound in the cabin. Her breathing changed, and I knew she was crying quietly. I moved closer, slowly, giving her time to stop me if she wanted. She did not. I pulled her into a gentle embrace, keeping it careful, respectful. She rested her head against my shoulder like she had been holding herself up for too long, and finally found a place to lean. I did not try to kiss her. I did not rush anything. I just held her. Her tears warmed my sweater, and it made my chest ache in a way I did not expect. "It is okay," I murmured. "You do not have to be the steel wall in here." She breathed out shakily. "I do not know how to turn it off," she said. "You do not have to turn it off all at once," I said. "Just for tonight, just enough to breathe." Her hand tightened in mine. Then, in a voice so small it barely carried, she said, "There is only one bed. We need to stay warm." This time it did not sound like only survival. It sounded like permission, like she was admitting she wanted closeness, not just heat. I shifted again, and she did not pull away. Our bodies warmed under the blankets, the cold no longer biting as hard. The storm outside kept howling, but inside the cabin there was a new kind of quiet. We stayed like that for a long time, her head on my chest, my arm around her, our hands joined. I felt her breathing slow as exhaustion pulled her down, but I stayed awake, staring into the dark, feeling the weight of what had changed. Because I knew that when morning came, it would not be just about getting rescued. It would be about what we were going to do with the truth we had shared. And somewhere between her tears and the warmth of her body against mine, I realized I did not want to go back to pretending she was only my boss. I woke to a quiet that felt unreal. The storm that had been screaming at the cabin all night was gone. In its place was a soft stillness, the kind that makes you listen for danger because silence feels too perfect. The room was pale with early light. Frost clung to the edges of the window like white lace. I blinked and realized my arm was still around Alexandra. She was curled against me, her breathing steady, her hair loose across my chest. For a moment, I did not move. I just lay there, feeling the warmth of her body and the calm in the cabin, like the mountain had finally decided to let us go. Then she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, and when she looked up at me, there was a beat where neither of us spoke. I expected her to pull away fast, to snap back into that strict version of herself. But she did not. She just stared at me like she was trying to understand what she felt. "Morning," she whispered. "Morning." I said back. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Her cheeks were slightly pink, and for once she looked like she had slept, like she had rested in a way she usually never allowed herself to. "This is not how I pictured the retreat," she said softly. I gave a small smile. "Me neither." We got out of bed in an awkward, careful way, not because we were ashamed, but because the reality was catching up. The bed had been necessary. The closeness had been real, and now we had to face what it meant. I walked into the main room and saw the fire had almost died. Only a few glowing embers remained. The cabin was colder than it had been in the night, but my skin still felt warm, like the moment had left heat behind. I found instant coffee packets in the kitchenette and boiled water. The smell rose fast, simple, and comforting. Alexandra sat at the table with her hands around a mug, watching the snow outside. Morning light made the world look clean and new. The mountain was covered in white, smooth and untouched like a blank page. After a few minutes, I set my mug down. My stomach tightened, because I knew I could not keep this inside anymore. "What happens when we get back to Seattle?" I asked, "and we are back in the office?" Alexandra did not answer right away. She stared into her coffee like it had the answer written on the surface. Then she inhaled slowly and looked up at me. "It is complicated," she said. "Company policy is strict about relationships where there is a direct reporting line. And people will talk about the age difference, about power, about favoritism." I nodded because she was right. Even if no one saw what happened, the risk was still there. But then she surprised me again. She leaned forward slightly and her voice softened. "Last night was real," she said. It was not just the storm. I felt something, and I have not felt that in a long time. My chest tightened. Me too, I admitted. You are not just my boss anymore. You are Alexandra, and I care about you. Her eyes held mine. The steel wall was not gone, but it was not in charge either. Something else was in her expression now. Hope, maybe. Fear too, but not enough to stop her. If this becomes something, she said, we do it right. I nodded. How? She sat back, thinking like the strategist she was. I can request a lateral transfer, she said. Same level, different project group. That removes the direct line between us. It keeps everything clean. My heart jumped, because that was not a small thing. It was her making space for us to exist without wrecking both our careers. You would do that? I asked quietly. I would, she said, because I am tired of hiding behind walls. I am tired of pretending I do not need anyone. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. She did not pull away. Her fingers turned and held mine. Then I am in, I said, whatever it takes. A faint sound came from outside, engines, distant but growing. Alexandra and I both looked toward the window, and for the first time, the idea of rescue did not feel like relief. It felt like the end of a private world we had shared. We packed our bags quickly, moving around each other in a careful rhythm. Not awkward now, just quiet. The door finally opened, and cold air rushed in. A resort staff member stood there in heavy gear, smiling like we were a funny story he would tell later. Road's clear enough now, he said. We are getting everyone back to the lodge. We stepped outside into bright snow and sharp air. The team gathered near the vehicles, laughing and trading stories about the night. No one seemed to notice anything different about us. If they did, they kept it hidden. On the ride back, Alexandra sat closer to the front of the bus, and I sat farther back. We did not touch. We did not speak much, but when the bus hit a bump, her head turned slightly, and her eyes met mine through the aisle. It was a quick look, but it held a promise. Back in Seattle, life returned fast. Rain on the streets, cars rushing, office lights buzzing. At Westlake, Alexandra was the same in meetings. Calm, sharp, in control. I was the same too. Focused, respectful, working hard. But everything underneath had changed. Some days, our eyes would meet across a table during a presentation, and my heart would kick hard, like it remembered the cabin. We stayed professional, careful, because we had to. But after work, we started meeting quietly. A small cafe. A walk by the water. Long talks in her car before we went our separate ways. Within weeks, she filed the transfer request. No drama, no gossip, just a clean shift that made sure she was no longer my direct boss. The first time we met after that, without the shadow of policy hanging directly over us, she looked at me like she was nervous, and it made me smile. I did it, she said. I stepped closer and took her hand. I am proud of you. Her eyes shined and she let out a breath like she had been holding it for years. I am terrified, she admitted. So am I said. But I would rather be scared with you than safe without you. That was when she finally kissed me. Not rushed, not reckless, just honest, like she was choosing something new. The months that followed were not perfect. People noticed, people whispered. Some friends joked, some coworkers judged. Alexandra faced it with her steady strength, but now she did not face it alone. I learned to stand beside her without shrinking. And one quiet evening, months later, we drove back into the Cascades. Not because we were forced to, but because we wanted to. We rented a cabin with 2 beds this time, and still ended up sharing one. She lay beside me and said, almost laughing at herself, "Who knew a blizzard could change everything?" Quote. I kissed her forehead and said, "It did not change everything. It showed us what was already there. We just finally stopped ignoring it." Outside, snow fell gently, not like a threat, but like a blessing. And inside, for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Share your thoughts in the comments and follow for more romantic, emotional stories.